Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Frank Sullivan. I'm the head of marketing and communications at London School of Design and Marketing. Today, I have an expert with me, my go-to expert on digital sales, Brad Smith, who is the director and founder of Succeed Digital. Welcome, Brad.
Thanks for having me, Frank. Pleasure to be with you.
The pleasure is mine. So this is our inaugural masterclass, and I thought we'd dive straight into a deep topic, which is lead generation strategies. It's on everyone's minds, but is it on everyone's fingertips? Not many people know where to get started, how to get started, and what they should be thinking at the strategic level versus the tactical level, how much to invest. Is there a methodology that people can follow? Of course there are. There are some strategies better than others, and there are many experts on lead generation out there that offer paid courses on this. So I wanted to elucidate some of the experiences that you and I have had in our careers on building lead generation strategies. We're very quickly entering an era where we're moving away from digital marketing into digital sales. Digital marketing used to mean thinking, how do I sell things online? But actually, online selling in its own right is arguably more important than digital marketing. And I think you'll probably agree with my hypothesis here when I say that people are more interested in closing revenue as a result of selling online than increasing their followers, engagement, audience, reach, and every other vanity metric out there. What do you think?
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think we've become inundated, Frank, with digital marketing strategies. And ultimately, people want to see, the ROI, the ROMI. They want to make sure that they're going to get value from the spend and the investment of time they're putting in. And marketing and sales for many, many years, it's that age-old sort of battle, isn't it, of neither the twain shall meet. And the reality is that actually digital sales is digital marketing done brilliantly with proven, demonstrable results. The business we got from this marketing and sales strategy was equal to this. And if you can't bring the results through and show that, then at the end of the day, it's just an awareness and a noise campaign.
So point one, after coronavirus, COVID-19, everyone needs to sell online or else their business is dead. That's a fundamental shift. And it's like what Satya Nadella said at Microsoft. Digital transformation that would have taken 2 years has taken place in 2 months. Certainly as an educational institution, we have been ahead of the curve because we do all of our courses online. We see a lot of our traditional bricks and mortar university colleagues really struggling because they're trying to replicate the classroom environment instead of rethinking the online learning experience from the ground up. But it's a fundamentally similar behavior to the way that business owners are thinking right now. You can't just take your physical way of selling and do that online. This whole transition to the internet of commerce or the internet of relationships, it's not like going onto Amazon and clicking something to buy a product. That's one type of customer experience. But let's think about a number of B2B sales, a number of large value contracts or sales that are driven by the relationship, where you have to build trust. You need to know me, like me, trust me, as you used to say. Know me, like me, trust me. How can you do that when all you've got is a camera and a LinkedIn profile, for example? Yeah. So the purpose of this masterclass is quite simple. It's to give you an overview of what is a lead, what is a campaign, how do you run a campaign on different digital channels. When we think about digital marketing, it's like the old Scooby-Doo villain. It takes the face mask off and, aha, it's been you, traditional marketing all along, trying to disguise yourself as something new and fancy, but it's not. The idea of action and conversions, building a brand, all of these things matter, but within the context of online channels. It's not mysterious art.
Yeah, and also remembering, Frank, the importance that the offline experiences in life should teach us how to behave online. Far too many people have an online profile or persona or way to behave that in the real offline world just wouldn't work, and they expect it to suddenly work in the online world, and it doesn't. the very thing that makes, and we'll go into some of this in more detail, I'm sure, through our call, but the very thing that makes a good lead generation strategy successful is keeping it human. Almost removing the idea that we can save time, we can automate processes, we can automate actions, because that creates a lazy-mindedness towards a lead generation strategy. And again, we can go into more detail later, but for me, it's about stripping it right back to, if this person were in front of me now and I wanted to get them to know me, like me, trust me, that's my kind of mantra really in any lead generation campaign. Would I get them to know me, like me, and trust me by taking this approach that I'm contemplating? Or actually, am I creating a whole bunch of scenarios where they can actually quite easily dislike me, not want to get to know me in the first instance, or worse yet, not even want to trust that I'm a sound piece of advice or someone worth listening to in my area of expertise, or in the product that I want to promote, or in the service that I'm trying to promote. So for me, that know me, like me, trust me has got to come through everything that we do from a lead generation strategy perspective.
When I hear people in marketing and sales talking about a mail blast, it makes the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. Like, blast them, spam them, set the robot loose on them. Let our automated sales machine generate revenue for us whilst we sit back and put our feet up.
Yeah.
That's the worst offender. And that is probably one of the main reasons why GDPR was brought in. It wasn't just to wrest control away from companies and put it back in the hands of private individuals and citizens. It was designed to regulate people like us in a soft way, to think differently about data.
Yeah.
When I think of a lead, I need to think about the human aspect behind it. I need to think about being respectful of their data. Do I have consent to market? How have I obtained consent? Is it still relevant? So this should not be a lecture on GDPR, but it should come with a disclaimer that if you are one of those people that says, blast them, send the robot loose, automate the hell out of it, build me a conversion funnel with 0 touch points with a human, this is not the masterclass for you.
No, and to help you, if you are thinking along those lines, and maybe you've become over-reliant, or maybe you've become one of those people who have been sold in the value and the benefits, of which there are clearly some benefits to email marketing and marketing automation, that those benefits can be realized in terms of mass volume. But the issue for me is that if you take the current traditional statistics, of which do fluctuate depending on which report you read, but let's say, to cover our bases, that 1% to 3% conversion rate from email marketing would be deemed, shall we say, acceptable in current climate, with often the results being nearer to the 1% than the 3%. What I would do is I would say, from a lead generation strategy perspective, let's flip that on its head. If I send out 1,000 emails, that means 997 people thought what I sent was rubbish. And would I, if I spoke to 1,000 people face to face, one to one, I would want 997 to go away thinking, I've gained some benefit, I've gained some value, I like this person, I know this person, I trust this person, I could work with that person, whether that's now 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, 12 years. For me, we have gone so far down this route of trying to automate, save time, create processes for efficiency, that we are now starting to lose the human to human element that makes people comfortable buying into us and buying from us. And any lead generation strategy that starts off with the processes by how we will manage to do this at scale, for me, is fundamentally flawed. The starting point has to be, how are we going to make sure that this message creates awareness, creates credibility, resonates with the audience that we're trying to reach, and how do we manage to maintain a human feel through as many touch points as possible through that conversation? If we can't have multiple touch points as a human, what we're actually doing is saying we're happy to be in the statistical average of people that just get the 1 to 3%.
This is a fundamentally important point, and you're right, Brad. Am I talking to an audience, or am I talking to an individual? And obviously, personalization has come a long way, and being able to create unique or highly personalized customer journeys depending on the profile or the demographics of the audience. That's become more sophisticated. We've got micro-targeting available on some advertising platforms like Facebook and to a lesser extent Google. Marketing automation is not evil. Marketing automation is a fundamentally good thing when you think about getting data from one place to another, or you're making data entry a lot easier, so you're not copying and pasting from one place to another. But if you think that sales can be automated, or if you think that you can automate away the human from the relationship required to drive a B2B sale, your business is going to suffer horribly. And I know a lot of people who are unwilling and incapable of investing the hundreds of thousands of pounds it requires to drive volumes of transactions as the 1% that gets converted from your 999 spammy emails.
Yeah.
So look, before we dig into the detail, let me give a brief overview. We've got about 35 to 45 minutes where Brad and I are going to go into detail on some of the methodology and justify why is marketing important, what's the role of sales and marketing together, where should that red line be. And we've got a 4-step method that Brad and I have co-created in order to help disseminate the idea that you can run the big idea on a channel. You choose the steps to measure. So crossing from one step to another is an event, a trackable event, and then metrics by which you can judge success, some of which have been heavily influenced by HubSpot and their 100% inbound only idea. We're not ruling out telemarketing. We're not ruling out events or physical marketing. We think that's an important part of the mix. But we're going to focus on online marketing and online sales for the majority of this masterclass, given the timing and the relevance of this. So, quick overview of where we're at. You may be able to see our slides on the screen. You'll see we're going to talk about the role of marketing. We have a get started checklist, so some foundational documents before you even think about executing a campaign. What should you be planning? What should you be writing down? What foundational documents are required to structure your thinking before running a successful campaign? Of course, the age-old adage of how much is too much. What should you be investing? And what's the idea, the controversial idea that you should spend a little bit first to test and then incrementally spend more as you continuously iterate and refine a campaign, and of course, the inbound method that Brad and I have created. Defining the big idea. What's the winning idea? The one sentence topic or the one sentence pitch that makes you go, aha, that's brilliant. I would buy that. Choosing your channel. Is it going to be video content on YouTube? Is it going to be LinkedIn and live video? Good luck with the applications process for that, by the way. Brad and I have struggled with that in the past. Is it going to be events and partner marketing? And then, of course, designing the customer journey. That's exactly what you are. You are an interaction designer. You are using design thinking to solve a problem. You have X number of users that need to go through a pathway from clicking on an ad and reacting either functionally or emotively to an ad that they've seen. This is your impression. This is your click-through to a landing page or a website or a piece of collateral, where you go through awareness and it builds credibility and interest with the customer. Then to a conversion step, such as a download or through to a booking a call or making a purchase, if it's a transactional type of sale. And finally, measuring success. Do we look at vanity metrics like cost per meal for impressions? I don't think that's particularly helpful. Or do we look at something more robust, like the Coca-Cola Coca model? How much does it cost to acquire an eyeball? So someone visiting your collateral, how much does it cost to convert a lead? And how much does it cost to convert a paying customer? Coca-Cola Coca, cost of visitor acquisition, cost of lead acquisition, and cost of customer acquisition. And once you work through these metrics, that's the component of your business. That is your customer acquisition model. And that will help you forecast revenue, understand your cost base, your cost of goods sold, and really help you drive the metric that you want to work on for that campaign. Brad, you ready to jump into the detail?
Yeah, and just one thing to add on that at the end, especially around customer acquisition. I mean, those things you've mentioned there, the cost of visitor acquisition, the cost of lead acquisition, the cost of customer acquisition, let's be honest, they're the metrics that sort of, keep CMOs up at night, aren't they, in terms of making sure that they can attribute and demonstrate measurable success. But all of those things still have to drive to your end destination. How will you achieve that end sales revenue, which means that all that work, all that testing, all that trialing of the budget that you just referred to a minute ago, regardless of which channel you use, actually is measurable and achieves success. Otherwise, they are really just vanity metrics that, yes, you can say we had more visitors. Yes, you can say we had more leads. But if the conversion then from the lead to the opportunity doesn't happen, it's just literally getting footfall through, people that have got a smile on their face, that wave and go away. And there's so many important things that need to be measured properly in order to make sure that you capture all that key detail.
So let's start at the beginning of this, Brad, the role of marketing. So marketing is the function of adding value to a business. That's my definition. What's your definition?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would also say for me that marketing plays a key role in the raising of awareness and credibility. One of my little, I suppose, strap lines I like to use is credibility before visibility. So if you think from a personal brand perspective or from a marketing perspective, people, you may be visible. You may be visible to many people's eyes, whether that's, on page, off page, online, offline, whatever. The problem is that are they aware of you for the right reasons? If someone becomes aware of you because you have determined that you are credible, whether that's a product, an offering, a service that you provide, the credibility and awareness has to come hand in hand. And that is what marketing should do. It should build excellent credibility and awareness so that then when the second stream, if you like, or the second wave of marketing goes out, that's more about visibility around those areas you've been perceived as credible for. So credibility before visibility, I think, is a key part of getting marketing right.
So you've been a commercial director before, and I've been a marketing director. And the argument is almost always the same, or it's always a version of the same argument. Marketing didn't deliver me enough leads, or the quality of the leads weren't high enough. Sales is to blame for poor revenue performance because they stopped following up, or they're being lazy. They're not using our multi-million-pound CRM system that generates beautiful reports. They're just not using it properly. Yeah. It rarely deviates from that same discussion. But that behavior is a function of being misaligned. And we're going to teach you how to realign the sales and marketing function. So why does marketing exist? Marketing's function is to add value to a business, and that can be measured in 6 ways. Brand equity, so you're increasing the value of a brand extrinsically or intangibly. Time to market, you need to reduce the length of time it takes to onboard a customer, also known as time to revenue, time to market. Reach, this is increasing the size of an audience of potential customers. The size of an audience of potential customers. Remember, that's a segment within an audience, within the wider audience that you are marketing to. Innovation is really important, so increasing the range of products or services offered. Are you fulfilling the needs of your market? Profitability is a fundamentally important metric. It's around reducing costs, maximizing margin, and setting prices that the market can bear. Of course, there are discounting strategies or pricing strategies, to reflect different types of products and services. And of course, finally, probably the most interesting and elusive metric is growth. Are you growing revenue through demand generation campaigns? You cannot grow a business if you don't use a version of this methodology. If you are not filling the top of the pipeline, nothing is going to come out of the bottom of the pipeline.
And equally, to add to that, if you're not providing through that pipeline management reasons why people should engage with you. Or for instance, take your point 4 around innovation. If you don't increase the range of products or services that you offer that perhaps are adapting or pivoting to a need in the market right now, I mean, this is very relevant given COVID-19. If somebody has always done what they've always done and doesn't adapt or change, what they've always done will not continue to always work. And even if what they do does come back and will be bought or purchased again or utilized in the future, it will still be a variation on what has historically worked. So part of getting growth right is also making sure that you are constantly reevaluating, looking at what it is you're offering, whether that's a product or a service, and asking yourself, is this still relevant? Do people still buy this thing that we are offering from 3 months, 6 months, 9 months ago, let alone 3 years, 5 years, 6 years ago? This needs to be an iterative process as part of your lead generation strategy. You should be having, literally, in my view, quarterly sessions internally, reviewing and looking at the productization of your services and saying, are these still on the trajectory to help our business continue to grow? Because if you're not innovating, you can be sure someone somewhere else is.
And similarly, I would talk, this point I'm going to make would talk directly to executives and senior managers. Don't tell your team that you want growth and expect them to perform and deliver sales revenue that is consistently good or beating target on target if you are not building the pipeline end to end and you don't have full control over your pipeline. Most people's pipelines burst in March. They were not resilient enough to survive an economic shock. Okay, it was a pretty big shock to the economy, but even little shocks, losing a customer, losing that 30% customer, it can be the difference between making mass redundancies and closing the doors to your business or staying profitable.
Yeah.
So when we talk about growth, have the methodology in place to be able to grow properly and manage the pipeline.
Yeah, and I think to add to that, Frank, as well, one of the things I've observed, especially in the last few months, is how part of your strategy for growth and part of your strategy for lead generation needs to include the what if mentality. What if tomorrow our customers, as we know them, rang up and said, we can't work with you anymore. Not we don't want to, not we don't like you, not you don't provide a great product or a service, but due to, issue A, challenge B, situation C, we now cannot work with you. If that were to happen and we were to put ourselves in the mindset of saying we have no clients from tomorrow, what would we do differently? That type of mentality for platform vendors, for agency owners out there, for sales execs of teams trying to sell products and services will help them to keep their pencils sharpened on the button, not getting complacent. We're not talking about living every day as if around the corner there's going to be a disaster, but what we are saying is making sure that on a quarterly basis, you are constantly refining, honing, rethinking your position and your proposition. Just because it works for today does not mean it will work for tomorrow.
I think that's a really powerful point, and it's almost the 7th way in which marketing adds value to a business, and that's defensibility of the pipeline. If you have a sufficiently good brand that is trusted, you have a high net promoter score. This is a very good metric that I like to use. It's on a scale of 1 to 10, how likely are you to recommend this product to friends, family, colleagues, or other victims? The defensibility of a pipeline is really, really important because cash flow comes from being able to focus on closing deals within the pipeline. So just to recap and close off on this module, the 7 ways that marketing's function can add value to a business can be measured thus. In brand equity, you're increasing the value of the brand. Most people call this top-line growth. You're reducing the length of time it takes to onboard a customer. You're really thinking about the customer journey and reducing your time to market. Does it take 6 months to close a contract, or can you get that down to 6 weeks? You're increasing the size of your audience, and you're increasing the size of your audience of potential customers. So that's reach into your target market. You're expanding your product range or your services offered. This is innovation. You're reducing costs. You can find efficiencies within sales and marketing. You can maximize your margin. You can determine the right price to set. What is your pricing strategy? Is it based on the value you're delivering? Is it based on cost plus? And of course, growing revenue through demand generation campaigns. If anyone thinks about growth, the answer is always going to be, how do we attract new customers? And that's what we're going to address in the next part of this masterclass.
And then that seventh one, the defensibility of the pipeline.
Of course, defensibility of the pipeline. So let's get started with the next module. This is the Get Started checklist. And it's really, okay, you can jump straight through to the methodology, but this is really about getting you to ask why and getting you to apply design thinking and critical thinking to your own business. So we have 6 documents that we would consider fundamental for any marketing manager or any marketing or design executive, either agency side or brand side, working with sales or working with senior executives who have said growth is the company objective. We want to reduce time to market, increase the brand equity. We want to make our pipeline more defensible. All of these things factor into growth. So what are the 6 things that you need to consider when understanding your own business? Brian, I've got a list of 6 things that I would consider to be important. For example, the business model canvas. Do you understand the components of your business properly? Before you even think about a campaign, can you articulate your business model? Can you speak to that?
Yeah, I mean, obviously you and I have had the benefit of reviewing these 6, and I think within each one there is such a deep dive that you need to get into in terms of articulating all of the questions that it conjures up to really get this right. But taking your first one, business model canvas, you mentioned you understand your own business properly. For me, that's looking at, it's a combination of 3 core things. Where are you today? Where do you want to be? How do you think you're going to get there? Now, you can expand that out again further. One of the things I love doing, I work with a number of agency owners, agency founders, CTOs, CEOs, etc. And one of the things I love to get to the heart of is, what do they love doing? What do they hate doing? And what can they do, or what would they love to do, that they don't believe they've got the ability or the time, usually the time, to do right now? So just to recap over that, what do they love doing about their current job? What do they hate doing, but that they're competent and able to do? And what do they most desire aspirationally to wish that they could do, but they don't feel they've got the time, the ability, the resource to be able to do it? And more often than not, that gets to the heart of where their mindset is towards their own business. It lets me understand how well they understand their own business and the trajectory it's on. And then how well they understand that determines usually how well they communicate and articulate that down to their teams. And that's, I think, one of the key things for me with your sort of first point on the checklist of the business model canvas. It's looking at from a leadership perspective. Do the leaders understand where they're going? Do the leaders understand why they're going in that direction and how they think they're going to get there? But then more importantly than any of that, have they managed to engage and get buy-in from the people on the shop floor, for want of a better expression? And do those people buy into that business, to that business model, to those aspirations? Because if your team are not part of it, then it's just like having a purpose which only you care about. And if you've got people working with you and for you and alongside you or affiliated with you through a partnership program, if you can't articulate what it is you want your business to do, how on earth can you expect other people to articulate it for you?
This is why I love doing these workshops with you, Brad. I'm coming at this from the perspective of being very analytical and metrics driven and thinking about the building blocks of the business. But I've left out the most important thing, and you're so right. It's the personal motivations or the personal ability of the people within the business. So the skills available within the team. We don't really answer that question within the business model canvas. We talk about cost and revenue structure, routes to market, what's our value proposition, what's our the different components of the business model canvas, which you can find on Strategizer or download from our website. We think it's a fantastic tool. It's a way to put your business on a single piece of paper.
Yeah, it's a good bit of kit for sure.
So
the starting point, isn't it? The key thing is with the 6 things that we're talking through today, if you do any one of them in isolation, you'll still gain good benefit. You will be able to understand your business better. You will find that will uplift and help your sales and marketing or digital sales strategy. But actually, in isolation, it's like it's one chip away at achieving the overall finished polished statue. And where if you can apply all 6 elements that we're going to go through today, I think you'll end up with that sort of almost beautiful model that you hope that then other people can aspire to be and want to buy into.
Yeah. Beautifully said. I would move on to point number 2, which is the value proposition canvas.
Yeah.
Defining your value proposition is this elusive skill. Some people think it means an elevator pitch. Some people think it means a 50,000 word dissertation on the market that you serve. It's really quite simple. What are your customer pains and your customer gains as a result of buying the service or product that you offer? What problems do you solve? And what value do you create by selling what you're selling? That's probably the simplest way to define it. But if you can create a list of all of your customer pains, describe the problem, take a scientific approach to this, like when we do a hypothesis or defining a problem statement, which we'll cover in our next masterclass. Write out your problem statement. As a user or as a customer, I struggle with problem X, and this is the impact it has on my business. Therefore, the gain or the solution to be used is Y. So write out your customer pains. Your pain points could be big or small. Big pains with a good solution. So gains and pains. Gains are what you get from buying the solution, and pains are things that go away as a result of implementing what it is that you're selling or the product that you're taking to market. Pains and gains are a good way of thinking about your value proposition. You don't need to write War and Peace about your market. Nobody cares. You don't need to be always at the high level thinking, what's the elevator pitch? What's the elevator pitch? Really think about the problem that you solve. And be honest with yourself. This requires a great deal of intellectual honesty. Do you believe in what you're selling? Do you believe in what you're selling? Brad?
Yeah, so in my case, absolutely yes. But for me, value proposition it's everything you said. And I suppose, again, one of my favorite things I love getting involved in, if I'm honest, Frank, I love the whole proposition and the positioning as well, which actually, although we haven't mentioned it here specifically as part of the 6, is almost inextricably linked, because proposition and positioning are not the same thing, but they are equally and almost mutually beneficial to understand both at the same time. So you can have a value proposition that explains the gains that client will achieve through coming with you, and it will minimize their pain and improve their gain. But actually, what you can then do is take that benefit, that product, that service that you have, and apply that to multiple scenarios and reposition that content or that messaging in multiple ways that actually may solve different pains and provide different gains to a much wider group of people. So as an example, if you're taking a piece of technology, take something like a web content management system. For some people, the pain point might be that they're using lots of disconnected, disparate technologies, poorly integrated, no single throat to choke application, and they can't get all of the systems joined up and working together well, the kind of the nightmare of the MarTech stack. And then you'll find that some vendors will have a message which will be around, will be your one throat to choke, will be the application that will solve all of your worries. Well, that message may resonate with somebody who wants to move away from what they feel is a very disconnected, siloed way of doing business. The problem is, though, is that if you were to say that exact same message to somebody who has deliberately selected those individual elements on the strength of best of breed rather than best of need, then for you to go in and say, we can rip all of those things out and provide you with one application for everything, would actually distance you during that sales process from likely being bought. What there is required is the gap analysis piece of, with all of the technology you've invested in that you're not going to rip out over the next 3, 4, 5 years, what in our application do we provide that plugs the gap of the pain points you are currently feeling? We noticed that the CMS element, at the moment, you've got a big team, and archiving, versioning, and workflow is very sporadic, or the time to produce content in a day is hours rather than minutes. So then you start to look at how your application can solve those very specific pain points, still be sold in to a client, and still, yield a decent revenue and return for the vendor, but actually meet the pain head on, rather than a proposition that says we are the best integrated CMS vendor out there, which actually distances half the people that you might want to go and actually pitch to. So understanding positioning alongside proposition is massively important, whether you're a product company or a services company. But fundamentally, it comes back down to that single thing. Do you understand where your customers' pain points are? Do you understand how to solve them and provide value? This is not a features and benefits exercise. That's not a value proposition. This is not a competitor slating exercise where your proposition is they're crap and we do a better job. That's not a proposition. A proposition is understanding how your platform provides immense value, takes someone from a point of pain to a point of gain, ideally in the shortest space of time possible. That's where real value can be recognized.
I think that's a fantastic segue into point number 3 around customer profiling. Where there is a mismatch or a misalignment between what you're offering or what you're selling and what the customer actually needs, you've got your positioning wrong. Maybe you have a fantastic solution that solves the problem for a particular type of customer. There's nothing wrong with your product. Your team is great. Your sales message is right, but you're just talking to the wrong people. 9 times out of 10, that is the reason why products don't make it to market. It's a misalignment between product and market. You don't achieve product market fit because the pains and gains for the customer that you're targeting are misaligned so terribly, which is why we move on to document number 3, the ideal customer profile. Who are you targeting to do business with?
Yeah.
And more importantly, who are you qualifying out of your pipeline?
Yeah, very good. I mean, audiences are discussed, all the time in sales, in marketing, in social, the importance of understanding and getting your audience right. And there's obviously 2 primary ways to do that. One is through that kind of gut feel. We think we know our audience. These are the type of people who bought from us historically, so we'll target those. And then there's the kind of very much data-driven insights and research piece to really get to the heart of the very specific types of personas that are most likely to engage with your product and your service. But you mentioned there 2 elements to audience understanding or ideal customer profile understanding, which is targeting and qualifying out. If I can give you a little bit of a useful, hopefully, story to that, one of the things I've observed in the last, 20 years of digital sales, I've observed so many times where the agency or the platform vendor had a very good message. They had a very compelling proposition. They had a product or a service which was absolutely something that people were happy to buy. They were not selling rubbish. The problem is that the people they were trying to sell to, at best, were not always even influencers. So going in and giving a demonstration of your service or a full deep dive of how great your product or business is about as efficient as me going and explaining why my 87-year-old grandmother needs to buy Facebook marketing.
A new ERP solution to manage her dentures.
Yeah, exactly. It's so important to know when to qualify out. And you can overqualify and you can more often than not underqualify. So when you've determined what your ideal customer profile looks like, you can do that from industry, from a sector, from a demographic perspective. You can do it from a job role perspective. You can do that from a brand perspective, the types of brands you want to work with aspirationally or whatever. But actually, what it comes down to is if you understand the pains and the gains that your prospective customer profile experiences, it actually doesn't become so much about the industry or the sector. It comes about which people, which organizations, which businesses have these pains or similar that we can solve. And selling isn't actually about selling, it's about solving. The brilliant selling is about solving problems. That's what helps you sell. So your proposition and your position doesn't solve problems, don't expect to sell it. or expect to sell it infrequently and randomly. If you want to build a pipeline, you need to have a targeted list segment that you're going to go after, one that you've qualified to have the pains that you can solve. And then when someone comes into that mix where they don't have that pain, do you have a positioning statement that enables you to adapt to what their pain is? And if not, then you should be qualifying out, because that will take your time away from focusing on your core target, which is where your revenue will come from.
So let me pick up on targeting in, qualifying out. We call it the ideal customer profile because that's who we would like to do business with. But it's also, if we flip this around from the financial or the investment perspective, we're saying, where are the adjacent markets? Can you repurpose 80% of your value proposition to a different type or a less than ideal customer profile? One where there may be less revenue, but the time to revenue or the sales cycle is much shorter. For example, freemium products. You have a free version that puts somebody on the hook, and then you've got different packages like bronze, silver, gold, small, medium, large style packages. And the objective of the sale is to upgrade, not to qualify in or out, but an upgrade path. So your ideal customer profiles say, who would you like to do business with? And it's very much a who, not a what. You are not targeting a limited liability entity.
Exactly.
Maybe on paper, but you are targeting an individual.
Yeah, I did.
More often,
Frank, it's,
for me, you and I have had training clients or training opportunities where someone says, "Oh yeah, I need to target a bank because HSBC has a problem with marketing." They don't. A team within a team with a non-descriptive job title has a minor pain that they cannot integrate the customer acquisition data and reconcile it to the number of mortgages that they've provided. For example, I've changed the name. HSBC wasn't the client, but it's good to illustrate the example that you're not selling. It's not a brand selling to a brand. It's a person selling to a person. And the ideal customer profile will help determine who you want to sell to. It will help you figure out who you don't want to sell to. So in persona land, we think of, enthusiastic Eddie, who's always trying to, who always makes a great customer, always a pleasure doing business with, enthusiastic Eddie, versus tire kicker Ted, who's always trying to get something for free. The ideal customer profile also feeds into keyword or customer analysis on advertising platforms. Everyone's heard of keywords and their importance in search engine marketing, but they haven't heard of negative keywords. So who do you not want to show your advert to? For example, I'm a local car dealership. I want to serve my ads in a 20-mile radius, but anyone searching for the word discounted or cheap, if anyone's searching for the word cheap, I want to exclude them from my process, because that to me is an early indicator on that they're a haggler, they're a discount buyer, they don't have the authority to purchase, or their budget is too low. It really helps to qualify out or target in.
100%. And I think as well, the opportunity is for your primary, secondary, and tertiary markets to be met. If you get your ideal customer profile right, then you can identify the effectiveness of that marketing campaign much greater earlier on. So as an example of that, take for argument's sake, again with names being removed, there is a strategy for a gin manufacturer to reach as wide an audience as possible in the hope that it obviously is going to sell and increase its volume of gin. Now, during that process, what becomes very clear is that there is an upsurge in the market of people who currently right now may not be drinking as much gin within a certain demographic. And so they then can have a secondary group, which might be non-alcoholic gin, that they then use to target to that demographic. So as an example, they now have 2 product ranges. Their marketing can be very focused on alcoholic or non-alcoholic audiences, but still fundamentally the core message of, genuinely fantastic alcohol or genuinely fantastic drink, or whatever they use as their strapline, will work really, really well, because they're not trying to go sideways and go and suddenly start selling, I don't know, cocktails or orange juice. And that may be a strategy. They may do that as well. But what they're looking to do at the beginning is target the maximum take-up possible through a very, very specific message. And that message then, if a whole bunch of leads come out of it, which then can be almost reused, retargeted, as they weren't right for the first message, but they're absolutely right for the second message, then that's my bit about credibility first. They've had the awareness, they've had the brand, they've understood their gin, they don't want to drink alcohol, but the non-alcoholic gin marketing will absolutely work really, really well to those ones, as an example.
Are you out in nature?
I opened the door. It was getting extremely warm. Can you hear a few birds tweeting?
Beautiful, beautiful birds.
If they're too loud, let me know and I'll close the door again.
We'll see how it goes.
No worries.
Now we get to be a little bit personal with our viewers. So I'm in my study upstairs, and you are?
I'm in my man cave home office out in the garden in very sunny southeast Kent. So
beautiful.
It's meant to be the haven away from all the madness, but since we've been working at home, I'm very much stuck with the madness, which includes, as we're talking personally, 4 children, 3 of whom regularly would quite like to Zoom bomb.
Well, we can include them as guest lecturers on the next masterclass. Okay, so moving on. We've talked about the business model canvas, the value proposition canvas with pains and gains, the ideal customer profile, target in, qualify out. The 4th out of 6 is understanding your external landscape. So there are various ways of doing this. A lot of these are, exercises taught in B school. For example, your SWOT analysis.
Yeah, very important.
Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Even if you do this simply, it may seem like a quick exercise, but it's good to prompt your thoughts about external factors, right? What's happening outside of my business? What is the context for me running a growth, marketing, or demand generation campaign? What is the context or the timing of the external market? What's going on outside of my bubble? You can also think of a PESTLE analysis, where you look at the external factors: political, economic, legal, technological, social, and economic, I believe. Oh God, I meant to be teaching this stuff and I forgot. The PESTLE analysis, we used to call it a PESTLE analysis: political, economic, social, and technological.
Yeah.
So, and then finally, Porter's 5 forces. So these are 3 different types of tools, but what's most important is, do you understand your landscape? Do you understand your competitors? Do you understand where you fit in the landscape? Because to determine your position, you could say, I'd like to be referenced up there with the big boys, or I see a sweet spot for this type of customer in this sub-market, or this is where we are right now and we want to grow our market share. We want to move in the trajectory of a larger competitor, or we want to downsize and become more of a niche and specialist player. Thinking about how you move across the chessboard of commerce is really important.
Yeah, and on the point of understanding your external landscape, the bit for me that goes even deeper than that, when you start to have these conversations with whatever agency owners, brand companies, etc., you get to this point where you identify quite quickly who they perceive, and this is a very important choice of words, who they perceive to be their competitors. And the wonderful thing about perception is that it's yours or my or their perception at that current time. It's a snapshot of where their head is currently at. But much is the same with digital strategy, with SEO, with digital marketing. Who our competitors are not just the people that are competing with us for the same terms. It's not just the people that are turning up on page 1, page 2 of Google, and we perceive to be competing with us on those terms. The competitors are the people that are placed into the opportunities either through referral, through recommendation, because of a good, marketing strategy they've got, and they're being found for the right things. And therefore, they become the competitors in the minds of those we are trying to offer a product or a service to. But the reality is that just because you competed with product A, product B, product C, or just because you competed with agency A, agency B, agency C, that does not actually make them a real competitor. It may just mean they have a better communication strategy, a better messaging strategy, a better proposition or positioning statement, and therefore, through the perception that they are better, they have now elevated themselves into your space.
Yeah.
You then have to elevate yourself out of that space and either into a new space or to be seen as the leader in the space with which you want to have that sort of niche area of specialism.
But I fundamentally believe that this is the detective work. This is the homework that you do before even writing a brief. Understanding the components of your business model, what your value proposition is, and how to whom it should be sold. This is important. But what about the external environment, as you say? Where is my place in the world? Where is my place within the universe? Is this a black and white thing where you're either competition or not? We live in an increasingly interdependent world, certainly in the technology space or the higher education space. It's a complex supply chain. It's a complex web of collaboration agreements and co-opetition almost. Like you said, the timing or the relevance of labeling someone as a competitor may not be so 3 months later. Maybe it was so 10 years ago. Right? Some people will always be naturally apples to apples compared as rivals. But you're right, the perception of someone who's a potential competitor by understanding your place in the universe and by understanding, and you'd be surprised at how much you could positively change your relationship with who you think is a potential competitor by picking up the phone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Going back to Brad's advice about human to human, you could very quickly figure out, actually, oh my goodness, they could be a really good partner because they've done 50% of the value proposition. We've got the other 50% of the proposition. Why is it only the bankers or the insiders that get to determine what is a good strategic fit? You would be surprised by picking up the phone and testing your message. If you're a startup, you will overcome the desire to say that you have no competitors and your idea is 100% new and novel. That's false. And if you're entrenched within your business and you can't see the wood for the trees, as is often the case, pick up the phone and talk to a competitor. Not out of malice, not out of...
Over competition is important. Just because, and agencies do fall foul of this, and by their own admission, they will often say, in fact, I had a brilliant call only this morning, which is why this is very fresh in my mind. Lovely agency owner, and he said to me, up until the point where we did our positioning with you, what we realized is that over the last few years, we've kind of basically said we do everything. And by saying we do everything, even if we have the competency to do everything, we don't want to do everything. There's certain parts that we just hate. For instance, they don't like creating the copy, or they don't want to do the digital marketing aspect. They want to do the tech integration and the branding and creative, as an example. Well, understanding who in their external landscape, who within that space provides fantastic content creation, fantastic video production, fantastic digital marketing expertise, that enables you to then partner with the right people that actually strengthen your overall and their overall offering, which in turn provides a much more compelling proposition to an educated end user. So the benefits go all the way down, right back down to the level of service that the client gets. The more honest and open people are about their product and their service, the person that actually benefits is twofold. The people with the proposition and the position find it easier to sell what they do because they've identified the pains that they solve and the gains they help you make. The client can easily get caught up in a very simple message to say, this is the point that you help us. This is the line of demarcation and responsibility. This is the bit you don't do, but we've got a flipping genius to help us with that bit over here. And this is where this collaborative, proper working partnership model, I believe in 2020, 2021 and beyond, will actually become the right approach. I think brands will need to move away from this thinking that, you know, they need one or two agencies or to do everything for them, or agencies will need to move away from thinking they need to have every single service under the sun in order to be purchased or in order to be chosen as a viable agency to deliver on that web project or digital project or whatever it may be.
You always provide me with such beautiful ladders into the next point that I want to make, which is messaging, and it's spot on. Whenever I hear a company say, we're a one-stop shop, it immediately turns me off. When I hear one-stop shop, I automatically associate it with a Swiss Army knife. Or even better, a potential supplier will tell me that they're the Swiss Army knife or the one-stop shop for things. Since when has a Swiss Army knife ever been the right tool for the job? Or the best tool for the job?
In fact, to pick up on your analogy, which I like, I would say that the Swiss Army tin opener is possibly the most annoying invention ever, because you end up chopping off the end of your finger, you end up slicing your skin way more likely than you'll ever actually open a tin of beans around a campfire. So actually the thing that it was designed to do ends up causing you damage rather than actually becoming fit for purpose. Now that could just be my poor utilization of a very good product, I hasten to add, but I'll just throw that out there for thought.
No, to be a Swiss Army knife means not to specialize, and to not specialize in this day and age will be the kiss of death for your business.
Yeah, and I'm glad I'm a big believer, you've used the right term there for me, specialize. There's a difference between verticalization and specialization. And again, I've come from industries where people have convinced other people that to verticalize and to have a real niche offering in a very specific industry or vertical is a strength. So just to play that back temporarily for a moment in line with getting your messaging right, let's imagine that as a business, you and I decided that travel and hospitality was the vertical, the industry, the sector that we were going to go after, and we were going to be brilliant at that. Well, right here, right now, we'd be having a very different conversation. We'd be presently struggling to work out maybe where the next revenue was going to come from, where our next client was going to come from, as a result of the fact that we've picked an industry and a market that, yes, has had some incredible peaks, but right now is extremely struggling. Now, that can be offset, of course, by having 2 or 3 verticals that you're competent and capable in, which goes back to your proposition has to understand the pains of multiple industries, and your positioning has to know how to adapt and resonate with each of those industries or sectors. So for me, whoever you decide to work with, whichever industry or sector you decide to go after, very simply, it comes down to this. Do you have a value proposition and a strong positioning statement with an ideal customer profile that you want to work with and can demonstrate you can work with in that sector? And have you only got a sector of one, in which case you're throwing all your eggs into one basket, which is risky. Some people would call that niche specialism. For me, that's still a risk, because you can do a brilliant job if you understand your value proposition well, as long as the people that you are trying to engage and trying to resonate with see the value in the work that you're providing and doing for them. What you can't do is do the age-old, we're all things to all people, with a Swiss Army knife, we solve all your problems, we open the can of beans, we let you cut the wood, you can saw through this, you can wind up string or all the other features that it might provide. Suddenly you've diversified that message, you've weakened your overall proposition, and you're seen as the jack of all trades, master of none. But what we have to get right, I feel, is specialism over verticalization. Just being a specialist in one vertical, I think in this day and age, is a difficult pathway to walk and get right.
So here's point number 5. Your elevator pitch and messaging has to be carefully created based on your own assumption of whether you're a specialist or a generalist, what market you're targeting, and what kind of language to use. But I would always start with the elevator pitch. What is the irreducibly simple way of communicating who you are, what you do, and why people should buy from you in 30 seconds? If you cannot pitch it in 30 seconds, I guarantee you that you will not be able to sell it in 300 seconds or 300 minutes. Being concise as well as precise, explaining something in a way that customers will understand. It's the difference between me telling you, for example, I build really great websites that will help you convert more traffic and grow your sales. And I do this in about 2 weeks. It starts with a workshop. And if you want to buy support or additional marketing campaigns from me after 2 weeks, then you're free to do so. I'll work well with others, and it's a fixed price. Compared to me sending you a 2,000-page technical specification on, for example, all of the intricacies of a CMS system, how cloud hosting works, how MarTech and marketing automation programs work together and building a funnel, that's no way to sell. I've told you in less than 30 seconds what I do, why you should buy from me, as opposed to coming up with content for content's sake. Carefully crafting a message is based on a few fundamental principles. It's, what do I want to say? Write it out in simple English as bullet points. Don't think of the best way to say something when you haven't figured out what you want to say. And more importantly, what would be understood by what you're telling? Think of this from the customer's perspective. Third, the tone, the rhythm, the timbre, the choice of words. Who are you talking to? Or in some cases, who are you talking at?
Yeah, absolutely.
You want to ask? I think I don't wish to labor this point. I'll keep my thoughts short and move on to point number 6 here, Brad, which is the last and final foundational document for building a lead generation campaign, really understanding your business deeply, and that's the timing of it all. This is an operational document. It's your marketing calendar. Is the timing of your campaign suitable? Great. The business model canvas, you've understood the components of your business and how it works, how the pieces fit together, your cost and revenue structure. Your value proposition, you've understand pains and gains, features to benefits, how to position yourself. With your ideal customer profile, you've figured who do you want to target and who do you not want to do business with, for example. Who do you qualify out of the process? With your external landscape documents, your PEST, your SWOT, and your 5 forces analysis, you see, where do I fit in the universe? Your messaging document clearly articulates your pitch points, your elevator pitch, your slightly longer pitch. It explains the components of your story. How do you tell the story of your brand, and how do you communicate that to your target audience? But if the timing isn't right, you've just wasted all of that effort. Build your marketing calendar and anticipate. Stop being reactive and thinking, oh my goodness, let's just do a masterclass on lead generation at 24 hours notice. Wink, wink, hint, hint, Brad. I think we're pulling it off. This is a great example of thinking about your marketing calendar. How do we fit the campaign into the overall business cycle? Is traffic going to die down around the summer because everyone's on holiday? Are we not going to, for example, for us, November is a good time. December is a slow time because all of our students go home for Christmas. They're already at home, obviously, but they're breaking away from class for the Christmas period.
Yeah.
Things like this. So what is your marketing calendar? What is the timing and relevance of the campaign that you want to execute? So that's my summary of the 6 foundational documents: your business model canvas, your value proposition canvas, your PEST, SWOT, or 5 forces landscape analysis. What does your external landscape look like? Your messaging doc, your ideal customer profile, and of course, your marketing.
And just to add to
what are you
at
publishing?
the end as well, I think a key thing to get right as part of getting your marketing, sales, content calendar, whatever word, it's all fundamentally tied up. It's very important to, first of all, look at how you will create a synergy and a flow to your marketing and content message. So as an example, if you decide as a business, as a product business, as an agency, as a service provider, whatever you may be, if you decide that you want to push content out there, it can't just be one piece of content that will fall on the ears of people, resonate, and then forevermore be forgotten to the sands of time. What needs to happen is that needs to form part of that overall marketing calendar. So it might be that, for instance, you plot every quarter the masterclass 1, 2, 3, and 4 that follow on, and next year can be repeated. You have a cyclic pattern of content that is always relevant, can always be updated. You then need to think about your evergreen content. So if you're producing this by means of a blog or a podcast or web page content or white paper content, can you take that content? Can you position that in multiple ways? Workshops, podcasts, website content, etc. And can you repurpose that and repush that out in different communication ways throughout the year? That's one piece of content being reused in multiple ways as part of the same marketing campaign will actually help to generate that consistency, that authenticity around who you are, what you do, why you exist, how you help, and will really help to drum home that message to those people who are looking to potentially use your services in the future.
Beautifully said. Is your message something to be consumed in the blink of an eye? Is it the electric shock of interest when a customer's eyeball hits your collateral? Or is it something slower cook, something more mature, something more sophisticated, drip, drip, drip over time? They say the internet wasn't written in pencil, and that evergreen content, as you've described it, content that lives there, that can be regularly updated, but the thinking or the cornerstone is correct, that is cornerstone content for a brand. And I think that neatly wraps up part 2 of this class. Moving into part 3, we're going to figure out how much to invest and what is the inbound method. So how much to invest, I'm going to touch on this very briefly. Start with a test, then iterate, then continuously increase the spend until you reach your target level of conversions. Start small, think big, act fast, and get into this agile iterative cycle. The way we do marketing campaigns is akin to the way people write software these days with an agile methodology. Test something, define your hypothesis, define your big idea. Brad, you had something to say?
Yeah, so we lost slight reception there between the two. I was just, I did and I've forgotten. You might have to re-go back. No? Go on.
Okay. So how much to invest is based on the trial budget that you assign and the incremental performance that you will get out of the test campaign, which you are continually optimizing. And usually you should get some specialist help with the optimization or learn about the optimization of a campaign, depending on the channel. If it's something straightforward like a telemarketing campaign, then optimization means making the targeting better and making the pitch or the script better. If it's an online campaign, for example, on Google Ads, it's about adjusting the keyword bid. It's about adjusting the timing or the location of where your ads are displayed, for example. So how much to invest is like asking, how long is a piece of string? Well, you need benchmark data and you need to test. Of course, we all know the answer to that question is twice the length of half of it. That's how long a piece of string is. Test something, develop your benchmark, and then understand your metrics. How much does it cost for me to acquire a visitor, so eyeballs on the collateral, or someone listening to me? How much does it cost for me to convert them into a lead? So getting a potential customer to self-identify through a landing page, through a phone call, through some sort of lead capture mechanism. And of course, how much does it cost to get the deal over the line? Any 30-second nugget of wisdom on the marketing investment?
I think the key thing I've seen and experienced myself is do not be afraid to fail in marketing. Just be afraid to not fail fast. And for me, I am more than happy having multiple ideas, multiple strategies and tactics to deliver on those ideas, and know that one of them worked brilliantly well and two didn't work, but didn't work within a couple of days. But the one big one absolutely nailed it and built a pipeline for the next 3, 6, 9, 12 months. When you are in sales and marketing, it is not a science. It is much about trial and error and adaptation of things that you've seen work well elsewhere in the past. It's refining, it's honing, it's trialing, it's testing, it's tweaking. And the more you do that and the more you're in the mindset of that iterative change process, I think the better you hone and refine and the better the results become. So it is actually about having the confidence to stand up and say, we're not always going to get this right from day one, but we're absolutely going to get this right if you let us trial out these ways that we think could work, and then get buy-in for that and budget, as you say.
Well, we find wisdom in the most unexpected of places. My guitar teacher yesterday told me an interesting anecdote. He said that no one truly improvises in music. We can only replay what we've already heard or what we've already interpreted. For example, an arpeggio or a melody or a phrase or riff, whatever you want. You can play with what you've already known, but those notes have already been played at some point in time. There's nothing truly original about what you're playing. The originality comes from how you play it. So within the context of marketing, what that means is don't be afraid to copy other people. No one has a moral superiority or moral claim on what is fundamentally good, right? Feel free to copy best practice. If your competitor is doing something clever and you're not, well, guess what? They're winning and you're losing. Copy them. Don't be afraid to copy other people's homework. Obviously, there's a classy way to do it. But until you are an original thinker, feel free to copy other people's homework. I know that's a terrible thing to say for me doing a masterclass for university, but it's true. Feel free to copy best practice of others because that's what makes it best practice.
And I think the bit that almost elevates it above that even more, Frank, is to leapfrog. In order to leapfrog your competition, or in order to leapfrog those who are perceived to be your competition, you have to, at the very minimal, be doing the same as someone else. And the same isn't good enough. The same doesn't generate the results that you and I are talking about through effective lead generation. But at the very least, that's your benchmark. Then what you do have to do is say, if we're not an ideas company, if we're not a strategy-based approach, if we don't have a strategy-based approach, and we kind of, all we can do is copy or imitate rather than innovate, we should absolutely recognize that about ourselves and we should plug that gap. We should either bring somebody in external to help us with the innovation rather than the imitation, because otherwise you'll always be playing catch up and never leapfrogging.
Very well said. So to answer the question, how much to invest? The answer is define your test budget, understand your conversion metrics. How much does it take to graduate a lead through a particular stage? What's your cost of visitor, cost of lead, and cost of customer acquisition? And don't be afraid of building best practice. So taking the best of what your competitors or other successful examples are doing with the intention of doing one better. To make yourself better requires iterative improvement over time. Remember, not all change is progress. So iterate wisely. Now, moving on to the inbound method. Part 4, here we go. You ready, Brad?
Absolutely.
Here we go. Here's the big old complicated slide that I've created that boils down lead generation into a 4-step methodology. Step 1, you'll see my my little cursor, my laser pointer pen here. Step one is about the campaign idea. What's your story? What's the big idea? Once upon a time, there was a supermarket that was lonely. They were lonely because they didn't have any people to sell eggs, milk, and bread to, for example. I had you there for a second. You were interested. Which supermarket is that? What's the big idea? What's the story? What's the irreducibly simple building blocks to your campaign? Is it a set of arguments that you have constructed? Or in a prosecutorial tone, our leading questions when we cross-examine a witness? What are the questions that build a campaign? What are you leading me down? Show me the path. Speaking of the path, let's come on to channels. Where are we going to publish? Social media, banner advertising, pay-per-click advertising, PR, public relations, and articles and content. Is it a content marketing strategy?
Thought leadership.
4, thought leadership, indeed. Are we relying on SEO and direct traffic? If so, how is our conversion experience? Email marketing, events and fairs, so physically, face-to-face, a trade show, or partners and referrals, which often make very, very, very high conversion rates because it's coming from a trusted source. Of course, this is not an exhaustive list of channels, but it is an introduction to where you might start planning a campaign. Step 3, the stage. These are 5 generic stages that you can replicate for your own business or your own project. Maybe tweak them, make them your own. You acquire a customer because they go onto a landing page. You capture that customer when they fill out the lead capture form. You convert them to a paying customer through your onboarding process. It could be a drip feed email marketing campaign. It could be a follow-up phone call. It could be an interview. For example, when we recruit students, if you think of the conversion event as being enrolled, typically you would join our open day, conduct an interview with a professor, and then you would be interested in enrolling in the university. Then you've got delivery. Are you delivering an ongoing service, or is it a transactional sale? How are you supporting that sale, and how are you building an upsell path or a growth path? For example, subscription or package-based businesses, B2B or software, something like that. How do you get from bronze to silver, silver to gold, gold to diamond? And how do you reduce churn? You keep them coming back every year. I can tell you it's not by locking them into the contract, it's by killing them with kindness.
Absolutely.
Step 4, the metrics that matter. How much does it cost?
Just one point, Frank, there on step 3 as well, just from a sales alignment perspective in terms of that lead generation funnel. So you'll often hear people talk about prospects, they'll talk about leads, they'll talk about, conversion. To me, there are actually 5 stages. I mean, there are many stages, but 5 core stages that also operate in that lead generation funnel. The first point is there a suspect? The second point is there a prospect? The third point is they are then a qualified lead. Then they are an opportunity, and then and only then can they become a customer. And that concept at the beginning I shared with you of my sort of mantra of, know me, like me, trust me. Actually, you can identify at each stage of this, of those 5 stages, have I got them to know me, like me, and trust me every single way along this process? Because if they don't know who I am, how the heck can I expect them to like me? If they don't know me and like me, how on earth am I going to build and acquire trust? And when I don't have trust, they don't want to give me their details. They don't want to sign up for the call to action that I want them to sign up for. They don't want to, in your case, to sign up for the interview with the professor because they're like, well, why would I do that? What's the value to me? So that liking, that knowing, and that trusting is so important, and it works equally well, whether that's a marketing or a sales funnel, in terms of helping you think about every stage of that funnel and that journey.
Fundamentally, we're going to spend a lot of time on this. So let me finish off on point 4 around metrics, which was understanding the cost of visitor acquisition, the cost of lead acquisition, your cost of customer acquisition, and then your return on campaign spend. How many customers did you get? Ultimately, that's what matters. Sales revenue as a result of being efficient in your marketing investment. Now's the time to talk about the detail. Let's talk about campaign ideation. How do I come up with my big idea? Well, usually I look for design influences. I look to online research, Googling, building a mood board or a storyboard of what I think the story should be, my big campaign idea. Is it a societal issue? For example, think about TransferWise. What's the one issue around banking that no one could say no to as a societal evil? And they decided it was hidden fees. What was a path for them to get widespread recognition? Well, it was flash mobs on the Bank of England and understanding that political sentiment, the big idea was the political sentiment behind stopping hidden fees, and they created a petition. It's 50,000 free eyeballs in a week on an online petition. That's zero budget marketing. And ultimately that led to a whole new campaign that went viral. Let me think about a couple of the more classy coronavirus related ads recently. Brad, the one you introduced me to with Volvo, in order to get people to stay at home and self-isolate, the advert was the safest place to be right now is not in a Volvo. Is it on message? Is it on point? Yes and yes. You still associate a Volvo as a brand with safety, and they've got the message right, stay at home. I thought that was fantastic. Yeah. So that's the big idea. What is the central concept or the central core, the very thing that goes at the center of your mind map to which all things relate? That is your big idea. It can be a big vision. Are we going to change the world by selling one apple at a time? Are we going to revolutionize the way the word pusillanimous, is pusillanimous a word? Pusillanimous? Pusillanimous? I don't know. The point is, it can be big or it can be small. It can be broad or it can be specific. The more specific, the better usually. So find your irreducibly simple components for your story and your why. That is the basis for your big idea.
I think at that point, a lot of people talk about defining the why, and clearly the why, the purpose, your mission, the reason for your existence, what happens if you're not here, what problem do you solve that others would struggle to solve, all of those kind of questions help you answer the why. But defining the why is only the start of the big idea. You still have to then be able to articulate clearly as part of your proposition and your position how and what it is you do. Whilst why remains the most important, it's also equally important to not forget the methodology and the process by how you will help somebody get there, because what that focuses you then is around not just how great your idea is and why it's awesome, but actually how your great idea will impact them, how it will drive or provoke or evoke a positive response, how it will inspire or persuade your prospective customer to engage with you. The why helps them understand why they should. The how you do it actually gives them the reassurance factor that you've done it before. And that's what takes it away from just being nice marketing, sales related words into actually something that's tangible and measurable.
That's a good point. So somewhere between step 1 and step 2 on the channels is around defining the objectives, or what levers do I need to pull to achieve the objective. So coming back to the function of marketing, is it top line growth and building brand equity? Is it about increasing reach and growing the audience size? Is it about increasing conversions and reducing the time to deliver a sale? All of these metrics are things that we as marketeers and online sales professionals think about when we're building a funnel. So this is a funnel view with the theory overlaid. You understand the creativity and the components that go into building your why. You know the function of marketing and the different objectives and the levers of changing the outcomes of that business with a campaign. You understand now the role of the 6 starter documents, like the business model, to help you become a sharper professional before you spend a lot of money on this process. Now, that you could put $5 into this process, or you could put $50 million into this process. This diagram that I'm showing you is how the vast majority of sales funnels will work. Obviously, it's a little off here and there, but I want you to think about the channels that we're putting forward now, which I think are the most effective. On social media, is it one message per network, or is it something separate? Are you using tools like Hootsuite or Buffer? Are you using scheduling software? Do you have good calls to action? Are your profiles optimized? Is your image, so what we call collateral and creative work, is it good? Or is it just a stock image that you've copied your logo onto with an inspirational quote and a blurred face in the background? It's not good enough. Think about the medium, think about the channel. For example, filming videos vertically. Most people say that filming vertical videos is a no-no, but actually on Instagram, you can only watch vertical videos. Moving on to banner adverts or display and PPC advertising. What's the call to action? Who's designed your banner? Is it the right size? Do you have tracking links enabled? For example, a famous publisher or an industry publication, they've got a banner advertising slot, and that's going to go and generate 5,000 clicks per month through to your website. Great. Are you maximizing your click-through rate? Is the message strong enough? Is the user experience positive? Third, PR, articles, content, and thought leadership. Are you quite literally publishing leading thoughts or following thoughts? I agree. Like, yes, please send me this. That's not what a thought leader does.
And equally, that goes back to my point earlier about imitation rather than innovation. It's the idea that you can create or share someone else's content, rather than creating your own. The reality is, if you read something and you agree with it, you can explain why you agree with it and put an additional slant on it. If you read something and you disagree with it and it doesn't resonate with your values, you can present an alternative view as to why that doesn't. And that will engage a different tribe, a different type of audience. And that's where, and again, I'll caveat that with healthy debate. You know, we're not interested here in encouraging trolling or content spamming for the sake of saying every day I created a blog, because actually that won't resonate with people either. You have to feel.
It's about being interested, being genuinely interested to show that you're interesting. The act of you engaging as an individual with subject matter created by others, regardless of whether you have a differing opinion or not, shows that you are indeed capable of operating intellectually or mentally as a brand at that level. Yeah. Obviously, I'm not talking about brand-to-brand communications, but let's say you're a specialist within a company. What are you doing for your personal brand within the brand? For example, as head of communications for LSDM, it's important that I'm showing that I can teach a class or show about entrepreneurship and educate a target market in order for me to be a subject matter expert on marketing and communications. It's the same thing for you. Are you practicing what you preach? Don't be afraid to argue with people. They say don't argue with people on the internet because you're never sure who's the idiot for starting the argument.
Yeah.
But don't be afraid to publish an original idea. Don't be afraid to engage with other people who have differing opinions to you, as long as you do so respectfully. Don't go in there with the intention of selling and hijacking a post. We all have these troll comments or spam bots that waste our ad budget and copy links and try and say, sell me Viagra or new bank accounts and insurance. That just it's comment spam, right? But the way for people to trust you is for people to see what you publish and what you think and how you think, because how you think is reflective of how your brand thinks. You are your own brand, and if you're not publishing thought leadership content, at least be engaging with thought leadership content.
Absolutely, I think there's a lot of overcomplication, if I'm honest, around what should I do, what shouldn't I do, is it okay to write this, shouldn't I write this, almost that double take on everything. And there's two things that we've already discussed today that I think really resonate with this point. Number one, having a joined up sales and marketing approach from the beginning means that you won't be doing anything random in isolation. You won't have to worry about whether or not you should or shouldn't, because your content calendar, your marketing calendar, your planning element will dictate that there is a certain amount of content that has to be written about certain types of subjects that will resonate with your predefined audiences, and that will help channel your mindset and thinking to produce the appropriate content that hopefully is then going to end up ultimately converting into leads for you. But the other less structured or process-driven way to come at that is to simply say, is what I'm about to write, is what I'm about to post, is what I'm about to share going to provide value to the people that I want to engage and resonate with? And if the answer is no, then basically, if you want to post it because it's about you, your family, and your life, then fine. Don't expect engagement. And that's not necessarily a bad thing either. If you want to write it, that's up to you. We've all got free will. But if you want it to tie back to will this turn into business, then it has to be something of value, of interest. It has to provide insight, ideas, and inspiration. It has to lift off the page and become the go-to document or the go-to podcast or the go-to video that people go, yeah, that just resonated with me. There was something about the way they delivered that. There was something about the way they articulated it that just worked and resonated for me. And that can be applied across articles, thought leadership pieces, PR, social media, even email marketing, bringing personality back to email marketing. I mean, I'm not going to name the vendor, but there are at least 2 mainstream vendors I can think of right now who are very, very good at marketing automation, who provide appalling marketing templates out of the box that actually feel totally impersonal and feel like it's a templated approach. So if you talk about conversational marketing and getting that one-to-one sort of feeling of personalization and relevancy, and then the next minute you get an automated template that just feels like everybody else, regardless of the quality of the words used, you still feel like you've just been spammed out on a list. So even getting the basics right like that, I think, need to be readdressed and thought through.
I just thought of something very pithy for you. You put the Brad in brands, and I put the Frank in communications.
Excellent. Let's see. We should do a poll afterwards.
That's our PR. That's our PR. Okay, moving on to SEO and direct traffic. Point number 4 on channels. This is search engine marketing is a deep and various chasm of, well, complexity. Long tail keywords, short tail keywords, timings, keyword stuffing that used to work 10 years ago no longer works. The best SEO strategy is to understand how PageRank is ranking your content on Google. So the algorithm for determining whether or not you show up on page 1 is the most important thing for you to learn if you choose to operate on this channel. It doesn't simply mean adding a meta title, a meta description, or a focus keyword to your blog post. PageRank is a popularity contest. And the measure of popularity is based on the number of people that link back to you. So the authority of the website that links back to you and the number of backlinks, quality backlinks to your content is one of the primary factors. So there are about 200 plus factors that go into ranking, such as do you have an SSL certificate installed on your website? Is it formatted correctly for mobile? Is it loading quickly enough? These are some of the minor factors, but the major factor when it comes to organic search and building a long tail SEO strategy is not simply am I getting found for the article, but what's the quality of the article? What's the quality of the content that I have published? And a great proxy for quality is to determine how many people have linked to that content from a source of authority. For example, if I've written an investment guide or an investment prediction for the housing market, and my company specializes in house market analytics, and we've been quoted on Forbes and BBC, and universities have referenced us in papers, those are highly authoritative websites linking to our content. Therefore, it's a pretty good proxy to determine whether or not I should be shown on page 1 based on what I've written. So understand that Google is a popularity contest, and that in order to increase your popularity, it's based on quality, not just technique and wizardry in what we would call white hat, gray hat, or black hat SEO techniques. Of course there are techniques. Of course there are optimizations to be done. But is your website linked to Google Search Console? Are you using tools like Moz or SEMrush? Great person to follow, neilpatel.com. Do you have a good grip of the keywords that you're being ranked for in a target market, in a particular location, at a specific time? All of that is designed to pull organic traffic to your website. So good original content, high quality backlinks, well optimized for your website, and being indexed by search engines is the way that you get traffic to your website. I would strongly suggest investing in content because, like I said, the internet is not written in pencil. Like Brad said, this is evergreen content. It lives there forever, but you can keep it up to date. I think anything more to mention on SEO and direct traffic, Brad?
No, on the content piece, though, one piece, which is if you're in a pitch, if you're doing a video, if you're doing a podcast, if you're creating a piece of PR or a post, remember that at any one time, you are only as strong as the weakest piece of content you put out there. So at the point at which you are captured, the snapshot of time as to when someone observes you for the first time, the product that you're offering, the service that you're offering, if your proposition, if your positioning, whether that's in the written form or the video form, is not on point, they will go away with either worst case scenario, a negative impression, or best case scenario, yeah, okay, so what type mentality. So when we produce content for websites, when we produce content for anything online, any digital platform, any channel, it really should be a question of, is what I'm saying, is what I'm producing going to provide value to the people who are listening to it? That doesn't mean it has to be highly polished. We were saying done is better than perfect. What it does mean is that it has to provide value, insight, ideas, inspiration, above and beyond what someone can just download on a blog somewhere else, read on a PR article somewhere else, or listen to on another podcast. It has to go above what is already out there. So a very simple example, if you're writing the top 5, the top 10 tips to enable this, have you done your research to understand out there in the market at the moment who else is talking about this? Have they done 3 tips, 5 tips, 7 tips, 10 tips? Well, you can have just enough knowledge to be really dangerous. So the question is, rather than just do what everyone else does, that imitation mindset of 3, 5, 7, or 10, ask yourself, actually, could I write 50 tips? Could I write 100 tips? Now, yes, you'll have the content masters that will say, oh, you're not going to get as much engagement, it's too much to read through. Actually, the people who really want to get it right, who want to buy your product or service, might be exactly the audience that need the devil in the detail. And they don't want 5, 7, 10 tips on something. They want to know all 100 tips that enable them to make the right decision. And if you're the only thought leader on those 100 tips and you produce that first, guess what happens? From Google's perspective, you gain that credibility, that rankability for being a source of information that people then go to. And then all those other alternative tips kind of just work their way, get wheedled out, and you become that authority. So you are as strong as the weakest content that you're willing to put out there.
Yeah, I think being known for publishing in a certain format is important as well. So if I think about Wendy's, is it Wendy's Burgers?
Yeah.
If I think about the way that they roast people on social media, and the way that their tone of voice or their brand is quite tongue-in-cheek and cheeky, and compared to something a little bit more stale and corporate, for example, people get known for their tone, or they get known for how they do marketing as much as what the marketing is itself.
Yeah.
So I think moving on to email marketing now, which is our 5th channel. Email marketing is fundamentally important. If you're not doing email marketing, you are missing a huge trick. You are 38% more likely to convert a B2B customer within the first week if you use email marketing and you have a carefully designed onboarding series. For example, you've run your campaign to generate interest and to capture a lead, but in order to convert the lead and graduate them through the next step, you don't have time to be phoning that lead 100 times a day. You don't want to be doing that. The lead certainly doesn't want that. But if the email is personal, interesting, and valuable, not just buying my product, really valuable copy, and I would encourage you to hire a copywriter. Even if you don't have that big of a budget, if you are not good at writing or not competent writing yourself, get a copywriter. It makes the world of difference. That's my professional experience talking.
Add to that, Frank, as well. Even if you think
when you write your email onboarding series, when you write your monthly newsletters, make it personal.
there's a delay.
That's a good point. Even if you think you're a good copywriter yourself, still hire a copywriter. It's the
it's a good way of challenging your own approach.
That's the old fallacy, isn't it?
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
email marketing is important. There are so many free or low cost email automation tools.
There's a delay a second. We'll have to wait for the delay to catch up.
I think we're getting slightly disconnected on the old voice system there. Events and fairs I'm not going to go into detail because it's pretty bog standard. Partners and referrals, I will talk about that in another episode, because partner marketing and building a sales channel deserves fundamentally its own episode.
Yeah.
Referral schemes and referring customers or incentivizing referrals, building out a sales channel specifically for B2B is fundamentally important. So I will talk about that separately. Chances are you're already doing it, but you could do a lot better by understanding how to recruit the right partners to sell through, sell to, or sell with.
It's massive.
3 different distribution models for a channel sales strategy. That's an episode for another time. So we understand what makes the campaign the big idea. We understand our main channels. We understand the stages. So Brad, would you like to talk a little bit more to the stages and to round off my points on picking the right channels?
Yeah, sure. So I think if you can't do all of the channels, don't do them all badly. Pick and identify the channels that you can do and do really well. So, I mean, there are other channels we can probably expand this list, but just to go with what we've got here, the 7 that we've defined as perhaps the more obvious, natural go-to channels. It may be, there's a lovely lady I know who runs a social agency called Immediate Futures, Katie, and one of her strap lines is, don't do social boring. And it really resonates with me, because if you're going to be boring and bland on social, do you really expect that social is going to convert business for you and help that lead generation pipeline? Absolutely not. So if you're going to do social, do it properly. Have a strategy for which channels within social you're going to use. Have a strategy for the frequency and how often you're going to update that content. Have a strategy and tactics for how many people within your organization are going to take responsibility for owning, sharing, pushing out that content, commenting, liking other people's content, putting their spin and their impression on it, get that brand awareness piece out there. So better to do a small handful of channels brilliantly well than all of them poorly. And you've got to make sure that the channels you choose are channels that you can continually work with throughout that 12-month strategy, because typically I would encourage any business that's looking at generating leads to view it as a 12-month cycle. A short-term, mid-term, long-term pipeline strategy has to look at a year at a time. What are we going to do this year to generate short-term, mid-term, and long-term revenue? So to take your point of events and fairs, you might say, we can't afford as a brand to go and do, and with COVID at the moment, this isn't possible anyway, but we can't afford to do the big exhibitions. We can't afford to be sponsoring those big events. But what we can do is small seminars, webinars, masterclasses, workshops where we have 30 or 50 in a room, for instance, on a thought leadership piece of content that we've produced out through our PR articles, which we then turn into workshops for brands to come along and work with us on understanding how to achieve X or Y. And I think if you're doing some of these things now, you've actually got to go back to the drawing board and go, given what's happened with COVID, how will we do this in the new world, in the new way of working after COVID? Will these things continue to work in the way they used to, or do we need to restructure our strategy and our tactics to now work in the new now? And also, which channels have we not historically used and why? And are we now in a position where we should be considering using these as well? Obviously, once you've determined those channels, it becomes so much easier to understand how you're going to then acquire those visitors, those leads, and those customers, and drive them through that funnel. As I said earlier on, for me, it goes beyond what looks like a very simple 4 or 5 step process. It's about when we bring people to the website, the acquisition of that contact. They are a suspect. A suspect will never become a prospect unless you have something of value to offer them. Do they know you? Do they like you? Do they trust you? Will they allow you to capture their details? Having captured their details, have you developed the relationship further? Have you given them something of value again? Do they now know you better, like you better, trust you better? Will they now convert? If they will convert, what will that conversion be measured or tracked by? Will that be a phone call, an interview, a download of a white paper, a conversion into a marketing qualified lead? Whatever that process is, they still have to know you, like you, and trust you at every single stage, which means you have to give value at every single stage. The moment you switch off the value mechanism is the moment your client switches off, or prospective client switches off from you. Having gone to that lead point, we then hope that that marketing qualified or sales qualified lead will become an opportunity. And the big question is, does that take 3, 6, 9 months, 12 months, 2 years? Well, there are ways which we can talk about on a separate call today, how you bring that cost of sale and that long-term pipeline dramatically reduced into short-term and mid-term pipeline. There are things you can do during the sales process to actually provide immense value and reduce the sales process down, sometimes by as much as 80 or 90% if you know what you're doing.
That's a very good overview. I think running an integrated marketing campaign, so a multi-channel spread, multi-channel campaign, whatever you want to call it, means that you may end up becoming the Swiss Army knife marketing manager instead of a specialist driving results on doing one thing really well before moving on. Obviously, everyone needs to maintain a social media presence, but are they leveraging each platform to its full potential? Are they treating video as a two-way conversation? Are they understanding how to build a broadcast operation for their company? Are they posting things that are engaging, or are they just recycling and rehashing the old? Are they staying on the forefront? Are they picking fights with big brands, or are they sharing their opinions? Are they determining what should be a future trend? What makes them a thought leader? Absolutely. And of course, the relationship or it's merged now. The role of social media as a two-way platform, as opposed to a publishing platform, has changed. Fundamentally, it is a conversation platform. In the day where someone can go and direct message the president and say "F you" or "I love what you do," that's got to be anecdotal evidence for the fact that social media is now a two-way conversation when people treat it like a broadcast operation. So be careful with social media when doing video content. Make sure that you are listening to the comments and driving engagement. It's not just about watching and passively consuming information. It's about interacting and engaging with content. So I think we've covered off our channels. We understand our stages. Coca-Cola Coca is my final message around metrics. Don't worry about reach and cost per meal or ROAS. Forget what you've learned in the traditional business textbooks around what makes a marketing metric valid. The only three metrics that matter in the age of digital sales is how much does it cost to acquire interest as a visitor or an eyeball, how much does it cost to get a customer to self-identify as a lead, and how much does it cost to graduate an opportunity through a sales process to become revenue. Everything else is secondary. Keep your eye on the prize. If you want to grow your business, follow this 4-step methodology. Make it your own. Make it fit your business. Tweak it here and there. Evolve it. And if you want, put in the comments below some of the issues you're having. Brad and I will be more than happy to engage with people who are engaging with this masterclass, and we can help you certainly from, if you're an LSDM student, feel free to ask us. Some of our professors will be able to interact with the issues that you're thinking about. What is a future topic? If you're a prospective student and you're wondering what is a specific term, or what is a business problem, or how do we address these in our short courses, ask us below. If you're a business owner, or if you are a brand operating and you need help understanding how to roll this out or find the right agency for you, I strongly recommend talking to Brad. He is probably one of my top go-to guys for digital sales and lead generation, especially when it comes to understanding the role of technology in marketing and digital sales. He's the right guy to help you choose the right agency for the job. And Brad, I want to thank you so much for your time with London School of Design and Marketing today. It's been a bumper session. I look forward to collaborating with you on the next one. And I sincerely hope that we're able to deliver some value both to customers of yours and students of ours. Thank you very much for your time, Brad.
Been a pleasure.